So I'll introduce us. I'll start with a joke first. The joke is us. That's it. So we'll just start because. But I want to say right now that the notes that we had for this are like lost and gone forever. So we're just going to kind of have to sort of wing this a little bit. So our panel is called Ponies versus Ponies. It's just comparing ponies from the show, cartoon horses to like actual real equines, and just sort of going over some of the differences and similarities and a little bit of that. And then the rest is just saying, hey, so here's some cool random horse facts that we can talk about that you might find interesting. So, and I also, the subtitle for this was, yay, I finally get a chance to use my overpriced education. So, I already... Thanks. There we go. Oh, okay. Yay, all right, there we go. I gotta stop saying yay. Okay, so I already said that. And we'll try not to bore you. But, okay, so it's a little bit about what they're like to have around and work with. Some of the things that horses do in relation to what ponies do. A little bit about their behavior and what they eat and some etc. So we'll have a question and answer session at the end. Whoa. We'll have a question and answer session at the end. So if you guys have any questions, if you could just wait until the end, it would be a little more efficient. And here's some thoughts on why you might be here. Some people might find this relatively interesting, and some of us might have be curious about horses. And in our opinion, horses are awesome. So, and obviously most of us here at this convention find some form of equine or equine, depending on where you're from, to be interesting or likable. So a little bit about us. My original badge name was supposed to be Not Rarity because I am a fursuiter, and I formerly had a double diamond fursuit that everybody seemed to think I was Rarity. People would come up to me and say, "Oh, you're my daughter's favorite pony. Can we get a picture of you?" And I'm like, obscure pony from one episode? I'm like, I doubt that. And then, "Oh, Rarity." And I'm like, I'm not Rarity. So a little bit of some things about me. I am formerly, I've been in the horse world for about 15 years. I formerly have done horseback archery, 3-day eventing, and used to do a lot of horse photography. So there's some just pictures, because pictures are cool. And then...
my name is Brony. I've been around horses my entire life. I actually currently work at a barn right now, and yeah, I'm boring.
Oh, it's cool. And I just had to put that there because every time I hear that word grunge, I can't help but think of Fluttershy's brother, who's kind of grungy.
Yeah.
I know they don't mean the same things, but okay, so we'll go a little bit into horse jobs. So in the show, most of the ponies have a job, or at the very least, a special talent that they're kind of building upon. Horses are a little bit alike. Most of them usually have a job of some kind. Some of them are really talented at a specific thing. And some of them, unfortunately, get stuck doing a job they're not really suited for.
Quilts and sofas.
Hmm?
Quilts and sofas.
I don't really know what that is.
Oh, it's a store.
Okay.
Ponies, they sell quills and sofas.
Oh, that sounds exciting. Okay, so a driving horse, they basically just pull these, little carts and things around. Draft horses also pull things around, but that's going to be a separate section. I guess I don't really know what to go into too much detail about right now because, BronyPalooza was way too awesome last night, and I'm a little bit destroyed. So it's just, you ever see somebody, with a carriage? That's driving. And horses have to be specially trained to be driving horses. And it's a relatively dangerous thing to do, but not too bad. Sometimes there's different hitch configurations, and they all have to be, usually takes a couple of years of training to get them, to know what their job is. And then there's race horses, which I know absolutely nothing about. That is the horse racing world is kind of its own little world unto itself.
The whole equestrian world in and of itself is a pretty niche place.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own, like, everyone who is in the horse community talks about horses. You know about horses, you know about all the other parts of the horse world, but you don't really communicate with people who are not involved in your career. Like, people who are into races and track horses, they're not going to know anything about farm work or anything like that. It's all pretty separate in their own little groups.
It's like a high school. It's super cliquey.
Yeah.
I just had to put that in there because of reasons. Some horses are literally their job is to just have people ride them around on trails. It's fun. They're like, that is a horse that's out in the middle of a horse track. You see all that nothing in the background? People will sometimes go to, like, a national park somewhere, and they'll ride horses for weeks. Just you carry your, whatever you can with you, and you just go out for weeks, and then you come back, and that's it, I guess. Certain horses, a lot of ranch work is still done on horseback. Some of that's been kind of switched over to using ATVs and stuff, but for the most part, like for cattle sorting and things, horses are really good at that. Like a horse, you can actually, like, once a horse gets used to doing things like cattle sorting and cattle herding, you can just get on it and take it into the cattle, and it'll just move cattle. It's kind of a pretty nifty thing. And then that's
acting horses are actually a really interesting thing. Horses are pretty smart animals, and you don't typically think of a horse as an animal that would be able to act, because it's a herd animal, it's a big animal, and big animals are difficult to work with in general, but acting horses are the whole idea of a horse being able to, like, be on screen or learn techniques that you would use for a show or something like that kind of goes against what they are biologically programmed to function like. And like for Lord of the Rings, they used over, like, I think 250 horses for that movie. Viggo Mortensen's horse in the movie, they had trouble getting him. There's a scene in, I think, Two Towers where they're trying to get the horse to pick him up. Like, the horse would put its head down, and Viggo would grab onto the halter and roll on the horse. And the horse, they were practicing with a dummy, and the horse kept sitting on the dummy. Obviously, you don't want a human to be in that position, but Viggo Mortensen worked with this horse personally, and I think actually ended up using one of his own personal horses in that role. But yeah, no, horses, for horses to be able to act is a pretty specific skill set, and it's interesting to watch them do that kind of work.
Yeah, as an addendum to that, like the movie Seabiscuit, which is, like, I guess really old now, but they actually had to go around and find, I think it was like 20 different horses that looked exactly the same, because they needed a lot of Seabiscuit clones for all the different shooting things. So it's not like, where you have one highly paid actor. You have to have like 20. You have to have 20 guys not making very much money. Yeah.
You have multiple horses in the same role.
Yeah. So this is a little bit about the sport of what they call now eventing. It was originally called a 3-day event. It's originally a military discipline that back in the 1940s became like part of the Olympic competition things. It consists of 3 different phases, each held over a day. There's cross-country jumping, which that is a photo of. There's dressage, which I'll get to in a minute, and then there's stadium jumping. So there's a picture of a little bit about, I guess video would be cool, but whatever. So how it starts out is you have, like say Friday is cross-country day where the horse has to gallop over cross-country obstacles like that nice log down there. So being having military origins, that test is a test of a horse's ability to cross the countryside at speed. It's like saying my horse, I could carry a message from, this outpost to the command post, and, I could actually complete it. I could jump over all these things and go through these water obstacles and stuff. That's actually day 2. I'm sorry. That's on Sunday, Saturday, whatever. Friday, like your day 1 would be the dressage, which is it's a bunch of movements that are sort of choreographed, I guess. Mm-hmm. Basically, just sort of demonstrating the horse's maneuverability on a parade ground, and also these horses are extremely fit. It's a demonstration of the fact that these horses are like bred and trained to fly over things like really quickly. It's a demonstration that even though this horse is fit and strong and fast, that it can still do some really coordinated, disciplined maneuvers in a small space without losing its mind. And then, so day 2 would be cross country. Day 3 is the stadium jumping, which is on the upper left hand. Those jumps knock down very easily, and what that is a test of is that's like if you can complete that successfully, you could say that my horse is able to jump these jumps after 2 days of exerting itself without knocking anything down. It can still jump well. Yeah, it's a very dangerous sport. If you Google eventing falls, there's 10 or 20,000 photos pretty much like this of people and horses not quite getting over things. It's becoming a bit of a spectator sport. It's becoming like the equine world's NASCAR. People just go to watch the cool crashes, if you're into that. There's some more fall photos. I find them kind of interesting to look at. So there's polo, which is a really old sport originating in what is now Iran. And I just put that in there because that was one episode where they had those little polo ponies that were playing polo with little sticks in their mouths. It's a neat sport. It's expensive. You need, I think, a minimum of 12 horses to play a game for one person. You have to keep changing horses. It's really hard on them. It's fun. Draft horses, not so much something that's used very much anymore.
They're for hauling heavy things. They're big. Draft horses are all very big, muscular horses, and they're hauling, obviously, logs, trees, whatever, lumber.
Yeah.
Draft horses are on old school farms with, where you're doing farm work, you'd be using draft horses to do any kind of really intense physical labor. Now with the advent of technology, tractors, things like that, draft horses are more or less at this point kind of novelty.
Exactly. And I should put in that a draft horse is it's like a job, but it's also like a type of horse. See, they're all very heavy. They all pull these massive things like plows, and that guy's actually in the right-hand corner is actually pulling a bus, like on tracks, like a train. Like that's his job. A little bit about the role of the horse in society, like 100 years ago versus now. Before World War I, the horse was used for really serious business, like jumping over jeeps and shooting things. If you guys have ever seen the movie War Horse, a couple of you, okay. That's a little bit. If you kind of pay attention, it's like, remember when the tanks came in, and they're like, well, what do we do with all these horses? Well, dinner, right? Because when you've got tanks and machine guns and stuff, going and stabbing each other with knives on a horseback is kind of inefficient.
again, with the advent of technology, horses used to give, an advantage to, like go back to Middle Ages or actually Genghis Khan that's what made him so powerful is Mongolia is a horse culture, and having your entire army mounted is a huge advantage. And with machines coming up, your heavy siege weapons at the time, they're really slow, they take a long time to set up, and they're really, they have their uses, but you can't win a war with just that stuff. So being on horseback gave a huge advantage to soldiers, but again, with tanks and modern machinery and stuff coming, like horses are, losing their jobs. There's no real practical purpose for horses.
Exactly. The horse has become, rather than a really awesome form of transport or
They're a
farming.
commodity.
Yeah, well, they've become like toys.
Mm-hmm.
So you do cool things like, so they don't really play football and they don't really fly, but I just put those there because I like those pictures. But like, you see a lot of people, they're there for our own amusement for the most part. We play games like horseball and etc. So, this is your section.
Yeah. Horse behavior. Horses are. Does anyone here have any experience with horses at all? Okay.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. In the horse world, there's a saying, joke, it's truth, but horses are only afraid of two things: things that move and things that don't. Horses are herd animals. They are, despite their size, they are built to run away. Their fight or flight instinct, they more often than not would choose to run. They are incredibly social animals. They are, a lot of research suggests that they actually have social networks that are more complex than humans. They've got a very specific hierarchy. Horses themselves don't really have niches or groups. Everyone is at a certain tier. You don't have a group of horses that are all in the same class. Each individual horse has its own ranking in the whole herd. Horses are one of two animals that are the closest thing you're going to get to a matriarchal society. Horses and elephants are the only two, but you have a mare that is typically in charge of your whole herd, and then she'll have a group of young stallions that are essentially bodyguards. They protect the whole herd. They ward off anyone who's not welcome in that herd. Being social animals, they bond very closely. If you look at horses in captivity, when horses are left alone by themselves, they get really anxious. They get really stressed. And most people keep horses in stalls, and that's not a bad thing. Stalls actually have a very practical purpose for like weather or anything like that. They can protect the horse, but it's really important for horses to be out in the open and be out amongst other horses. They need that interaction, otherwise it can literally kill them. Being alone can literally kill a horse. Horses are very, very smart. A lot of people think they're unintelligent because of the fact that they are afraid of everything. But horses can learn, like they learn through positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. Traditional conditioning is actually the biggest way that most horses are taught how to do any kind of job. And horses are extremely good as therapy animals. Like the barn that I work at now, we have a lot of people with Down syndrome, people with different kinds of palsy or anything like that. Horses are excellent at working with people's disabilities, and the way that horses behave, it kind of encourages you to behave in a particular way. It's not like a dog where you can tell a dog to do something and the dog will be like, oh, I love you, I'll do that thing. Horses, you have to really kind of ask their permission to do anything. You don't command them, you ask them things. And
yeah, and they also don't. They sort of know human body language. I mean, they
they recognize
But
human facial expressions.
typically, yeah.
You can't treat a horse like a human. Another example, like typically when you're tacking up a horse, when you're getting ready to ride, you're putting the saddle on and everything, you put them in cross ties, and that's just two ropes that connect to the halter and hold the horse in place so they don't move. When a lot of horses get scared, they back up and they break out of the cross ties. I've seen so many people run up to a horse and go like that and get in their face, and that's just going to make the horse more afraid. A lot of things that you would consider, it's like, oh well, I'm being nice, I'm being calm. A horse is not going to see it that way. Remember, even though humans like arguably are not that violent, we are predatory animals. We are predators, and we think in a generally aggressive way. We take initiative when we make our decisions, and horses are more reactive. They don't think about oh, that's just a piece of paper, I don't need to be scared of that. They're going to think, oh my gosh, I don't know what that is.
That wasn't moving there yesterday.
Yes.
And sometimes I've ridden a couple of horses that if there was a thing there yesterday and then it wasn't, they will remember that spot for weeks. That there was a thing there a couple of weeks ago and that bothered me. Mm-hmm. And they're sometimes very mysterious like that. But there's a saying that horses don't lie. He was going back to something he had said that they're very good at getting people to realize what their body language and their behavior are like, because you might have some people that don't realize that they are acting in a very aggressive manner, and a horse would just I don't know, it's like a very zen thing. It's hard to explain. Mm-hmm. They just kind of like are the way they are, and they react to situations that they just there's no like thought process to it. It's just like oh, you're being a jerk. Like I mean, they're going to be a jerk back based on whether it's a really dominant horse or I'm going to be all like ooh. So they could go like like roid rage pony, or they could go Fluttershy, one or the other. So I don't know if we want to advance. You kind of talked about teaching.
Yeah, we touched teaching.
Well, I'll just add a couple of things. So they're becoming very popular in teaching things to people, specifically in therapy and rehabilitation. They're I don't know a lot about these particular fields, but they're doing a lot of things to help people with personal problems, traumatic things, and some just innate personality, disorders or traits or whatever.
Equine therapy is actually one of the most effective ways to overcome things like PTSD and depression and a lot of your psychological disorders. Generally where you go, it's not expensive or anything like that. It's just one of those things. It's hard. You're working with a large animal, so it's not something that a lot of people. It's not a pill or something you can take to get over, and it's an extremely personalized thing. But
yeah, and it's a big confidence boost for like a lot of people who suffer from like really serious like timidity and shyness. Like working with a horse. I mean, it's like anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 pounds of animal that could, their feet are made of like basically the same material as like bowling balls. They're kind of dangerous when they want to be. So, for somebody to be able to, like who can't interact with humans socially, for somebody to be able to go in and say, well, I was actually able to get the horse to kind of do some things. It's kind of a good confidence booster for them. Just some extra stuff on herd behavior. He talked about they have mostly a flight instinct when things happen. That's how they've evolved over millions of years or whatever to become what they are. Their herd hierarchy is mostly based upon I guess I don't know if violence is too strong of a word, but it's We'll just say it's violence based. The person in charge is the one who's kind of like those dragons in that one episode. It's about who's the biggest, baddest, meanest boss mare in the whole herd. And another thing about a horse is if you're working with a horse, somebody has to be in charge. It's either going to be you or the horse, because the horse knows, instinctively that somebody has to be in charge, and if you're not willing to be in charge, then they'll take a deep breath and say, well, I'm going to have to do it, and they'll just push you out of the way and say, all right, this is what we're doing. Herd of horses, there's always a horse in charge, and it's usually they will either intimidate other horses with their little horse facial gestures.
You've got standard herds, which are male-female herds. You've got stud herds, which are basically, bachelor groups of stallions that will go around, and they're, not really like horse gangs, but they're the more aggressive ones. That they go looking for fights. They go looking for mares. They go, but it's always run by the biggest, baddest horse. Even in your, family herds with a lot of young horses, the mare that's in charge is always like, think Nightmare Moon.
Yeah. So, friendship. Okay, so, the ponies, obviously, a lot of things are about friendship, naturally. Horses will have friends. We've had, I'm sure you've seen a few. I know certain horses that they've always had that one horse or two horses that they just love to be around. They'll, they'll go eat grass together or whatever. And then there's also that one horse here and there that they want to kill the second they see it. I don't know how they decide these things. I just kind of watch and try to stay out of the way.
Interesting thing about this, going back to race horses, I don't know if any of you ever watch horse races, but when they're leading the race horses out on the track, there's always, most of the time it's another horse, but it'll be donkeys or goats or something. It'll be, they generally call it like a partner pony. And that's basically, it's the racehorse's best friend. It keeps them calm before the race. It reduces their anxiety. And again, like as I said before, being alone can literally kill a horse. Horses need to be around other horses, and they need to have some kind of connection with other living things.
Yeah. So, and horses also befriend us. But, we've all had like a horse that really liked us. We've all had a couple that have really hated us for some reason. So a little bit about equine intelligence. He obviously hit on that already. They're very smart in their own way. They can't do algebra and stuff. I mean, I can't even. So, but I'm going to get into this a little bit later with some anatomy slides. But I was going to bring a horse skull, but we weren't sure if that would have been appropriate. But the horse's head is about that big. Most of that, believe it or not, is all airspace. The horse's brain is the size of a walnut, I think.
A little bit bigger than a walnut, yeah.
I mean, they're specialized creature that's evolved to do two things: not get eaten and eat grass. That's pretty much in the wild. That's pretty much what they do, and they make more horses. So therapy and rehabilitation. A lot of prisons have programs now with horses, and it's helping. We went over rehab already, and they're just supposed to be all nice and smooth and in order, but our notes are gone, so we're doing this out of memory. And we just stuck that in there because that's cute. There's all sorts of therapy things that horses are doing, and
I have a horse that looks exactly like that at my barn.
Nice. So what do they eat?
Not Chinese food.
They don't eat Chinese food. They don't. I mean, they could.
Yeah.
I mean, I've found that some horses have taste for really interesting things. I knew one horse that would just her eyes would roll into the back of her head anytime watermelon was around. She loved watermelon. But so they eat a diet primarily in the wild. It's pretty much grasses. They're grazers, not browsers, which means that they eat things that are on the ground, not typically trees. they will eat a tree if they, can. If they're a domestic horse, it needs something to do with its mouth, they'll just start chewing on trees.
It's mostly it's a vegetarian diet. They, again, pretty much exclusively grass. In the wild, you're eating grass all the time. In barns and domesticated horses, you feed them grain, feed them hay, things like that. A grass diet is the best thing for them. They actually, even though they are vegetarians, again, they can actually handle, a pretty different, diverse, I guess, palate, whatever you would call it.
And going back to Genghis Khan, wasn't he there was a guy, like a long time ago, I never met him actually because it was thousands of years ago, but there was a guy that actually fed his horses meat. Horses actually can eat meat. They're not designed to eat it. Like, have you ever, like, been like really in the mood for apples one day, so you eat like 8 apples in a row, and then Never.
like if you eat something that you're not used to eating, it can loosen your stomach. It can it's not like hurting you at all. It's just loosening your stomach or something. And I've had a horse at my barn. Like she loves cheeseburgers, and like you don't want to give it to them all the time. But if they're willing to eat it, I mean, there's really no harm in letting them have it. Their bodies are designed to digest grass specifically, and if you look at the body of a horse, pretty much, our intestines are pretty much just the lower half of our torso. But with a horse, it's like their lungs, their heart, everything is crammed way up here, and then the rest of that is just gut. It's just specifically for digesting grass.
The reason behind that is that grass, anything cellulose based, is not necessarily a really efficient form of food. They depend heavily upon bacterial fermentation to break down what they eat. And they're not like cows. They don't have 4 stomachs. They have they're what's called a modified monogastric. They have 1 stomach. Cows actually technically only have 1 stomach, but it's in 4 compartments. But that's another story for another day.
That's for CowCon.
That's for CowCon. Okay, I'm getting ready for that one next week. They have what's called the cecum, which is just like this pouch that's full of bacteria. They're exactly like a termite. Termites eat wood, and like termites without the bacteria would die because they couldn't digest the cellulose in wood. Horses are the same thing. And another note about their digestion is that that's the number 1 health problem with horses is their digestive tracts. They have extremely poorly evolved digestive tracts. Yeah. They are, it's amazing the way, well, we'll get to that later. It's amazing the ways in which a horse can, have come into health problems, but... So anyway, this was a slide here. Pinkie Pie, loves like sugary things. Horses adore things with sugar in them. Mm-hmm. They love sweet things. Mm-hmm.
And mint. Horses are crazy for mint.
Yeah. They love those puffy mints from like the drugstore. Mm-hmm. So this is, we all know, I think Berry Punch is her name. Yeah. Well, most of us know her. That's the alcohol pony. She's like maybe 3rd best background pony out of all of them.
We put her in there because horses actually love alcohol, and particularly grain-based alcohol like beer and whiskey. Horses love beer. One of our private...
Don't ask how we know.
Yeah, one of our private owners at my barn, when she rides her horse in the summer, he's a big draft horse, and it's hot during the summer, so she brings him a cold six pack of Guinness for him after his lesson.
Wouldn't it be better because he's a draft horse? Wouldn't it be better if she brought him some draft beer like on tap?
Yeah. No, but horses like. I don't know about all types of alcohol. I don't know if a horse would actually drink wine or anything like that, or any kind of liqueur. But
I mean, there's only one way to find out, right?
But yeah, definitely horses love beer.
Yes. So do not attempt.
Yeah. Do not give horses beer. Like, just don't do
You
it.
might actually, I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's been any science. I mean, I'd
It's-
love to be the guy who gets to figure this out, how much alcohol it takes to get a horse drunk.
It is really hard to get a horse drunk, really hard, but please do not try.
I mean, you figure like they'd probably need like a
They're-
truckload of beer.
Because they're specifically meant to digest grass and things like that, the alcohol doesn't really affect them the same way as it would like a dog or human or like a carnivore. Their body just, you know, it metabolizes everything quicker, so it takes significantly more alcohol, not just because they're bigger animals, but just the way their, you know, bodies are built, it takes significantly more alcohol to have an effect on them.
And also, it might cause them to die, so we don't recommend doing that.
Don't.
You
try.
don't. So do they have pets? Okay, because we know the ponies have pets. We're gonna have to speed up a little bit because we're like 20 minutes left.
All right.
I didn't think that this would take us this long. I thought we. So okay, so do they have pets? They don't have typically a true pet relationship like the ponies do, like we do. We have pets. They are known to have animal companions. This is a picture of a horse that I used to deal with, who had this cat that she loved. This cat. She would go. The cat would rub up against her front feet, and she'd you know nuzzle the cat a little bit, and the cat would lay down, and the pony would actually scratch the cat's belly, and you know you see the size difference, right? The cat's smaller than the whole pony's head. The pony would maybe get a little bit careless, and the cat would swat her on the nose and say, "Be careful." And then the pony would be a little bit more careful next time. They race horses you mentioned earlier oftentimes will be kept in a stall with a goat, just so they have like something to just kind of, you know, chill out with. And some of them, some actually do not like other species. I think it was it Seabiscuit? There's that scene where they like, oh, let's get him a goat to keep him company. And then you see the next scene later, there's a goat flying out of the stall. Yeah. I know some horses are deathly afraid of cows because of, I don't know why. They don't make any sense sometimes. So markings, you know, we know the ponies have markings. We've got some little markings there. There's two different kinds of markings you're likely to see on a horse. You're going to see human-made markings and natural markings.
Natural stuff.
Race horses will typically have a lip tattoo, which...
It's for identification.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure what the sequence of numbers means, but it's essentially a code to let you know, like how basically what class of racehorse they are, what level of racehorse, their pedigree, things like that, and it's a complex code.
Yeah.
You've got hot branding and freeze branding. Hot branding is you know, hot iron, and then, you know,
down on the right.
Yeah, very painful. And most places, it's more or less a died-out practice now. It's pretty much exclusive to third world countries and things like that. Rare occasions.
Texas.
Yeah, Texas. Freeze branding is you can do it multiple ways, but it's relatively painless. Really, what you're doing, you are freezing the follicles on the horse's fur, and it permanently changes the color of the fur in that area. So you can see this horse with the arrow on the side. You know, there's no pain involved or anything like that. It's altering the follicle, and that's like again, all farms now use that because it's way easier to see. You know, you don't have to worry about infection or anything like that. And it's a way more efficient, faster and more efficient way of marking horses and identifying horses.
Some breed registrations, like up in the upper right-hand corner, that is a, it doesn't want to back up, that's fine. That is a branding iron. That is from a KWPN North America. I took that picture at an inspection. If your horse passed the inspection, they would give you the option of fire branding his rump, and you'd have your brand on him. So, or their brand. So horses also have these natural markings. There's different facial markings. There's snips, stripes,
Blazes.
Snips, blazes,
Stars.
and that is a star, an irregular star technically, which I just put a couple up because they oftentimes have really cool things on their heads. I used to ride a horse that had a perfect picture of South America on her forehead. This one is a little bit like crescent moon, or maybe kind of like an apostrophe or something. That one reminds me of a martini glass. I knew a horse that had a perfect coffin shape on his nose, which was a bit ominous. And that's cool. I just thought that kind of looked like somebody made a dagger out of an old femur or something. That one's awesome. He's got his own...
That is so meta.
Yeah, man. It's just like, whoa. He's got his own outline on himself. And then this next one, I don't know if this is real or not. I just love it. I hope it's real. But this one, can you guys figure that one out? It's a horse.
It's got horse written
It actually,
across the side.
if you look very it's that's also kind of meta too. So this is a really terrible diagram explaining some of the possible different color combinations they can have for coat markings.
Pretty much you're gonna be stuck with black, white, or some variant of brown or tan.
Yeah, and there's a little bit face markings and leg markings. We won't go too far in depth. I'll just show some slides of some of the most common colors you're going to see on a horse. This is chestnut. It's just reddish color. And there's a spectrum of chestnut going from like a strawberry chestnut to like a liver chestnut, which is kind of almost brown. And this, I thought this was awesome. I Googled chestnut horse. This is a South African racehorse named Horse Chestnut. That's a chestnut horse. How awesome is that? Bay is like brown coat color with a black mane and tail. Red roan is...
Roan is a combination of red hairs and white hairs, so it kind of gives you this pinkish color horse.
Yeah, it's a mix. It's a mix of the white and the red, yeah. Mm-hmm. Blue roan would be like black hairs and white hairs, which is different from a true gray. That's a black, obviously. That's pretty easy. Gray, actually, the hairs are just gray colored. Yeah. So that said, Palomino is this nice gold-colored horse. Mm-hmm. There's also a breed of horse called a Palomino, and they are all Palomino colored, but not all Palomino horses are the Palomino breed. It's kind of complicated. Yeah. They could have been a little bit more creative when they did that. So how long do they live? Well, we know that these two live like forever.
Pretty dang old. Most horses, they have an average life expectancy of about 30 years. However, a few months ago, the oldest horse on record passed away at the age of 51.
Yes, in Ireland. Mm-hmm. 51 is
ancient
for a horse. So, okay, music. Do horses like music? And you see very, very, very Ethan. That's from, okay, sorry. There's a picture of I just put that picture of I was fursuiting his Double Diamond at this rave. He's probably the only horse thing that likes this kind of music.
Yeah. In general, horses are actually not fans of music. It does depend on the horse, but most types of music get a horse stressed out. However, certain classical music and country music, calm genres, have actually been shown to promote a sense of calmness in horses and barns. Anything with minor chords, jazz or any kind of rock and roll or whatever, horses generally don't like. Again, it does partially depend on the horse. I've seen some horses that like dubstep. One of the horses at my barn loves the Foo Fighters.
Well, I put some trap on it, trap music. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It's like hard to explain. It's like it's pretty
heavy electronic music.
Gritty, awful. I mean, I like it, but it's gritty and awful. It's just that's its thing.
Horses probably would
I
not
put
be a
some
DJ.
of that on in a barn, and because I was trying to get some stuff done and needed something motivation, and all of the horses ran away. So, yeah. So we won't go over all these parts because there's too many of them. But there's names for all these things. Some of them are weird. You wouldn't think that a horse would have a part named a cannon or a hawk, or I mean, like pasterns and fetlocks. Like we have our own little language here. And here's, in relation to that, here's, how those same pieces on a pony kind of, they're a little bit more simple. And I like that they add to this that, contrary to popular belief, the flank isn't actually the horse's rump. It's on the side, ahead of, that hind leg. So it's maybe the only thing they've actually gotten wrong on the show, probably. And this is the underside. I just put this in here because I thought horse feet are cool. This is just a little diagram of what goes on underneath on the bottom side of their feet. The hoof is a really interesting biomechanical mechanism.
Yeah, the hoof itself is made out of keratin, which is like hair or fingernails, but it's really thick. And the whole thing, you've got a bone that sits, it's bone surrounded by like muscle and fibrous tissue, and then really thick hoof, and it's kind of acts like a, not really, there's not an air pocket there really, but it's a, there's a lot of padding there.
Well, it does.
Essentially, they're walking on their thumbs.
Actually, they're.
Whatever.
Yeah, it's from a comparative anatomy standpoint, but so the hoof does three things. It provides protection, it provides support, and it also, if you see these arrows here, the hoof wall expanding and contracting, it also acts as this crazy awesome blood pump for getting blood up and down their legs. Mm-hmm. Just a little diagram of what goes on in there. Some crazy stuff. You see this pink stuff, triangular bit in the front that they have. Their hoof wall is held on to their distal phalanx by these lamina, which is like Velcro. It's just kind of neat. I just put this in here because I think it's cool. There's a microscopic blow up of what it looks like, and then here's a diagram of how much blood vessels and what's going on in there. And then, that was in the notes, man.
Yeah, we can breach that.
We can, skip that.
We'll skip that part. Grooming, horses love grooming. They groom each other. They groom themselves a lot. They are relatively clean animals comparative to most other things.
Unless they're light colored, and then they love mud.
Yeah, well, they like to roll in dirt and have a thick coating of dirt on them. But that actually helps protect against bacterial infection, and it keeps them clean in their own way.
It's mostly an insect repellent. Bugs can't bite through stucco. They do social grooming, which is a thing where picture, I guess, explains it all. They groom each other. Mm-hmm. It's a thing. It's a practical thing, but they also do it as a bonding thing. And so if you see horses standing out in a pasture somewhere, you'll notice that they often arrange themselves head to tail like this. It's so the tail, the big thing for the tail isn't just to look fabulous. It's
a fly swatter.
A fly swatter. So they swat flies off the other horse's face, and the other horse swats flies off their face. And I'm just putting some full pictures in because these are cool. Because everybody should love baby horses. And these are just some full pictures that I had. They don't all wear hats. But they do sleep a lot. Mm-hmm. And we're hanging up. There we go. They shed out in this weird, they're born with like a crazy amount of fluffy hair coat. Come on. There we go, Windows 10. Never mind. All right, that one. So they're born with this, you see the light brown hair? They're born with this crazy amount of fluffy hair coat, and they gradually shed out over the summer. And this horse is becoming this nice, sleek black horse, but he's got all this gross, fluffy stuff on him. More sleeping, and then a little bit about health. Yeah. They break down a lot. They're like an Italian car. They require a lot of expensive stuff all the time. Yeah. Something's always happening with a horse. If you have a large quantity of money you no longer want, get a horse, and it'll find ways of making it disappear.
Yeah. To put a horse on, like if a horse is having a problem and you need to put him just under on the table just to be examined, it's going to generally run you bare minimum like $5,000. and that's assuming that like you find like it's a minor issue. It is easy to rack up thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on horse medication, and generally you see like race horses. If a racehorse breaks its leg, it's generally just put down, despite the fact that there's a lot of money in racehorses. To rehabilitate a horse, especially because they're on their legs, they rely on their legs all the time, and if they lose one of their legs, it's more or less a death sentence for them.
Well, and another thing is a lot of musculoskeletal injuries, they don't actually come back from fully.
It's hard for horses to rehabilitate from severe injuries like that.
Yes. So they're expensive.
Yeah. If you want to know how to make a small fortune owning a horse, start with a large fortune.
Yeah. How do you make? Yeah, that's a good joke. How do you make $1 million in the horse business? Anybody? You start with 2 of them, 2 million. So we're gonna actually just go on and we're gonna just talk really super briefly about our favorite horses and our favorite pony. And that's my favorite horse right there. That's a horse I actually raised from a baby. I've known her since she was about maybe an hour old, not even an hour old. She's cool. She loves mechanical things. She loves to look at tractors. She'll like climb on a tractor if you let her. Sports cars. She loves to watch people weld. You guys ever watched anyone arc weld? It's unpleasant. That's why they wear those masks. It actually sunburns your eyeballs. She'll just look at it and go, "Oh, that's cool, but I can't. Oh, that's cool, but I can't." And then my current favorite pony is Starlight Glimmer for some reason. Yeah. So. Oh, and that's a picture of my favorite horse.
This is a horse from my barn. She actually just left our barn the other day. They moved to Indiana, but her name is Princess Eliza, and she's my baby. And
he's obviously a big fan of Derpy.
Yeah, I'm a Derpy guy. I think she's adorable, and I think she's like the perfect representation of the fandom as a whole.
None of us know what went wrong. That's so. That's the white slide that I don't know why it's white, but so if any of you have questions, we could attempt to answer them. But I will say that if you have any very detailed questions that might require a few minutes of answering, we'll just stand outside.
Meet us outside.
So there's probably people that are coming in here afterwards. I don't know.
Any questions?
Yes. What's a cob? A cob. Oh yeah.
A cob is a. You saw how the draft horses are. They're big, tall, muscular horses. A cob is short, stocky horse. They're not quite a pony. Ponies and horses are actually, a lot of people think they're different animals. They're the same animal, it's just height difference. Ponies are just short horses. And cobs are short horses, but muscular. They're stocky.
Ponies are not necessarily like adolescent horses. They're just
Yeah, they're small horses, but they're normally proportioned.
Small equines.
Yeah, cobs are very muscular build, but not very tall.
A pony. Okay, so horses are measured in
Hands.
England and America. They're measured in a dimension is what's called a hand, which is 4 inches. They're measured in centimeters in Europe, metric countries. So a pony is anything that is 14 hands and 2 inches or less. A horse is anything that's over 14 hands and 2 inches. But there are pony breeds and there are horse breeds, but you can be like you could have a this is a horrible example, but you could have a Dale's pony that's 14 hands and 3 inches, and it would technically be a horse, but it would also technically be a pony. It's
gray area.
Convoluted, is what it is. An interesting factoid in Iceland, the Icelanders are kind of pretty infamous for their horse breeding. They're really very, very serious about what they do, and they have a very unique horse culture. In the Icelandic language, they don't have a word for a pony or a horse. That's the same. It's the same. They use the same thing.
You had a question?
Yeah.
Oh.
You mentioned earlier about how we're very social.
Mm-hmm.
Are horses like other animals where Clydesdale sees a different breed of a horse, there's going to be a complication?
It really kind of that's left up to the individual horse. Generally, no. It's not. horses are not really racist against other horses. They're only racist against other animals, other species.
Yeah.
But it's not uncommon to have variety like draft horses, and we didn't really mention this, but like you've got cold-blooded horses, which are your big draft horses. You've got medium bloods, which are like your average quarter horses and stuff, and then you got warm bloods, which is your tall, spindly, skinny Arabian horses and things like that. It's not uncommon to see them all in groups. Hot-blooded.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon to see them all together, to have, big, small, diverse groups.
Some horses will. I've known a couple horses that if you're familiar with a paint horse.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a brown and white. Pinto is. I mean, a paint horse is a breed, but pinto-colored horses. It's brown and white. Like the horse that had horse on the side of it would be pinto-colored. I've known.
Take a brown horse and throw kind of white paint on it.
Yeah, exactly. I've known a horse that would see a pinto horse and lose its mind because they couldn't figure out what it was.
Mm-hmm. Question?
Sorry.
Can you repeat that a little louder, please?
If you want to come up, because a little
and-
bit closer, because we're
You said that things go wrong with horses. I'm just wondering how that works in the wild.
That's a really good question, actually.
Okay.
I can actually answer that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. The wild African zebra and the Zella zebra and the Great Lake zebra, and if you're English, you say zebra, right? Okay. Their number one cause of death is that not lions or cheetahs or that. So when you get back to the show, when Sakura came up with this potion that takes apple bloom's teeth, that tells you something about Sakura being a very old zebra.
Wow.
By the way, she is also a gray zebra, which means she's also gray. Because all zebras are black with white stripes. So, in the wild, number one cause of death for, I presume, with horses would be that.
That actually.
That's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
They rely on their teeth for eating and everything, and they're built to eat. I mean, if you're built to eat and then you can't eat, then you're SOL.
Well, it's kind of like I said about their digestive tracts not being, or I should say, the type of food they eat is not an efficient form of nutrition in a way. They're, not to go too deep into it, but that grass that they eat goes through a lot of processing on its way through the digestive tract.
And the number one killer of domesticated horses is colic. That's basically a knot in the intestinal system, and that comes from can come from poor nutrition, can come mostly from not moving around, not being out in the pasture.
So anyway, when their teeth go bad, that is the teeth provide a mechanical breakdown process for that grass. It increases the surface area of the grass. An individual grass blade is not really easily digestible, but if you break it down and it is able to go into the stomach and be better affected by digestive enzymes.
Any other questions?
You get around it basically just by reproducing fast enough that you make up adults, right?
Okay. So the question was that they are able to continue a population by reproducing fast enough.
Well, I was just wondering if some things go wrong with them when obviously if they didn't have some way of dealing with that, we wouldn't have horses.
I think the difference is a little bit of a hard thing to compare the wild ones to the domestic ones because a lot of the stuff that they die from as domestic horses is problems that are a result of being in a domestic situation.
A lot of going back to racehorses are bred for their fear instinct that helps them get out of the gate quicker and everything like that. Wild horses are not, they're still flight animals, but they're not as afraid as domesticated horses.
Yeah.
Pretty much every issue with domesticated horses comes from breeding them into domesticated animals.
All right.
Any?
I'm just wondering, have you ever named one of your horses after a pony? And if so, did that pony have the kind of personality that the pony you named it after?
I've never named any of all the horses at my barn are owned by other people or owned by my barn manager. So I've never named any of them, but I've given them nicknames, not necessarily of ponies from the show. We've got a horse named Odin, and I started calling him Kelso because he looks like the horse version of Ashton Kutcher, and he acts exactly like him. If I gave him a camera, he would make his own horse version of Punked.
Are Clydesdales the largest type of horse?
They're generally considered the tallest breed of draft horse, but they're not necessarily. Horses can be tall and they can be wide, and when we were talking about hands before, you measure up to the wither bone, basically their shoulder blade.
Actually, it's their spinal processes, but yeah.
Layman's terms. Clydesdales are the tallest, generally the tallest breed. Your stockiest horse is, I think, Belgians or...
Like, it really kind of depends. I mean, I'd say Percheron.
Percherons are pretty stocky horses. Any kind of draft horse is going to be... Yeah.
All right, but yeah, I'd actually have to... Maybe I don't really say disagree, but I think the biggest draft horse on record wasn't it a Shire?
Maybe the any of your draft breeds are going to be your big massive horses. The largest horse on the current largest living horse is a horse named Big Jake, and I think he is a Shire. The biggest horse in history was in the 1920s, 1930s, named Brooklyn Supreme. He's about 19 hands high, and we don't have a picture, but to give you an idea of how massive that is, his owner was about 6'6", and the horse's wither was about that much taller than him.
Yeah.
And this horse weighed about 3,500 pounds, so big guy.
That's big. So I think we'll have to. I think we're
You're going to continue
We're
this
going to
outside if
have
you
to
guys have any
continue
questions.
outside, which should not be a problem. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.